Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to give my thoughts on the full season, in mostly not spoilery fashion, of the FX Limited series Say Nothing. So this show was on my radar prior to its release, but it wasn't something that I had my eye on as a potential contender for like one of my top shows of the year. But if you've been around my channel for a while, you know I have a great deal of respect for FX and how they just seem to be the home of like fresh and original stories. You know, they let creators create over at FX. So when I saw a show was coming to FX that took place during the Troubles, I was immediately intrigued. And now, here I sit, I finished the 9-episode series, and I'm here to tell you this is one of the best shows of the year. And it's going to be a consideration for my number one spot. But before I get into talking about the show proper, I want to give a little bit of background on the Troubles. Now, I'm no historian, I'm just an avid fan, so I'm not going to sit here and give a whole fucking lecture or whatever, but I do want to briefly go over this since understanding the backdrop is important to understanding and appreciating the show. So the Troubles took place primarily in Northern Ireland from the 60s to the late 90s. Now, when I say Northern Ireland, I don't simply mean like in the northern part of Ireland. Like, for all intents and purposes, Northern Ireland is its own entity, distinct from the rest of the island, which is known as the Republic of Ireland. I probably shouldn't have put island and Ireland in the same sentence, but Ireland is an island, and the northern part of it is its own entity called Northern Ireland, and the majority of it, the rest of it, is the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland is part of the UK, like along with England, Scotland, and Wales. Those four entities comprise the UK. They use the pound sterling as their currency, just like England, and it has its own capital, which is Belfast. The Republic of Ireland, on the other hand, like I said, it makes up the majority of the island, and it's part of the EU. It has the euro as its currency, and it too has its own capital, Dublin. This division among the Irish is at the forefront of the Troubles and thus this series as well. On one side, you have Unionists, who are primarily Protestant. There's always a religious piece, right? They want Northern Ireland to remain part of the UK. Also of note here, remember, with Ireland being an island, there's water in between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, England, Scotland, and Wales. So also that's gonna feed a little bit more to that feeling of division, that separation from the UK. And these Unionists, they want to remain part of the UK despite this separation, right? And then on the other side, you have the Nationalists. They're primarily Catholic. They want a united Ireland. They just want the whole thing to be Ireland. They don't want, part of this belong to UK. No, we want to be our own shit, all of us together, a united Ireland. And then, of course, you have the British over in England. They've sent soldiers over to Northern Ireland because, remember, it's part of the UK to keep the peace. And these three angry factions, all in Northern Ireland at the same time, it was bound to be a disaster. And at the forefront of it all, you have the IRA, the Irish Republican Army. IRA are nationalist. Again, they want a united Ireland. So you know they sure as shit don't want any British soldiers over there trying to keep the peace. Like who the fuck are you? Like, they don't even acknowledge British authority, and why would they? From the perspective of someone from the Republic of Ireland, British soldiers might as well be like foreign terrorists on their land. That's like British soldiers being sent here to America and trying to tell us what the fuck to do. Like, on whose authority? You have no power here. You have no say here. This is my fucking country. You want to get your ass whooped again? like, get the fuck out of here, right? And that's how the IRA see the British presence. That's understandable, I think. Problem is, as we see throughout the show, war is nasty, and the IRA had some particularly nasty tactics. You know, as the bombs explode, traitors are exposed, people die. You know, the line dividing up the sides becomes increasingly blurrier to the point where the IRA is killing their own people for, suspected treason, and doing this with very little, if any, evidence, and just kind of for shitty reasons, right? And you might be sitting here going like, man, that show sounds pretty good, right? I ain't even started talking about the show yet. Like, this is reality. Like, this is what was happening in Ireland in my lifetime. I'm 42 years old. I was alive when this shit was happening. Like, the characters we see in this show, real people. Like, they have Wikipedia pages. Look them up. One of the main characters of the show is still alive today. He's 76. But do I think that's enough history for today? Yes, I do. And it's time to get into talking about the show proper. But I wanted to get that history stuff out of the way. And it's compelling stuff to learn about. So I encourage you all to do further research on the Troubles even after you watch this show. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but You can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today. Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel. Or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there, so this is the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film, and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. So like I said up top, the show takes place against the backdrop of the Troubles in Belfast. And you might be wondering, like, hey, Mike, you also said up top that you respect FX for telling original stories and letting creators create, but this is just a retelling of history, right? And that's true. That is true. But who else is telling these types of stories, though, right? Nobody is. Meanwhile, you've got 17 mockumentary comedies, 27 shows that take place in a hospital, and 148 fucking shows that are either slightly dumber or slightly smarter versions of Reacher that are always exclusively described as fun and nothing much else. Yeah, that was a fun premiere. This is a fun show. Oh, a little side mini rant here. It seems like more often than not, when a show or film is described as fun, the person talking about that show or film knows that it's not actually any good. They're just using the fun thing as their justification for liking it anyway. But anyway, moving on. A show set during the Troubles is going to be fresh and original to me because there's not shows about the Troubles that exist primarily right now. I'm sure there's been some that's been made before. I'm sure there's been some that have been made before. That's better. And there's none that are on right now. It's a lot of the same shit over and over on TV right now. So the show's cast, my God, every single person fucking killed it. Like, and there's a younger version and an older version of each of the main characters, and they didn't like use tech to age them up or age them down. They got entirely different people to play these characters at different ages, and the transition is seamless, you guys. Like, I even had to go on IMDb once because I legit wasn't sure if they just put a beard and a new hairstyle on the same actor. Like, they were all that fucking good. The transition was that fucking seamless. The older versions look just like older versions of the young version. Like, it really, really strong casting here. I'm not going to say he does the best job on the show. I have kind of a sleeper pick for who I think did the best job on the show. But this has been the year Anthony Boyle. He's one of the stars of the show. And this year alone, he was in this. He was John Wilkes Booth in Manhunt. He was in Masters of the Air. And while I thought Masters of the Air and Manhunt were ultimately big disappointments, he was far and away the best thing about both of those shows. In some way, the only good thing about those shows. Here, he plays a guy named Brendan Hughes, who's a pretty big deal in the IRA. Brendan is fiercely passionate about the cause and would give his life for United Ireland. The stars of the show, though, are Dolores and Marion Price, played by, again, 4 different women, 2 apiece, a younger version, an older version for each of them. The younger versions of Dolores and Marion are played by Lola Pettigrew and Hazel Dupe, respectively. These two, along with Anthony Boyle, are the real standouts. We spend the majority of the show with these 3 playing their respective characters, and all 3 of them are absolutely incredible. I can't speak highly enough about these 3 performances. Hazel Dupe as Marion is the real standout for me. She plays Marion so unassumingly, but Marion, like Brendan, is, again, fiercely passionate about the cause. She reaches the lowest point of anybody on the show aside from their aunt, who I'm going to talk about a little bit, and she doesn't fucking blink, man. And on one hand, you got to admire that, right? Like, that dedication to your country, that burning desire to unite it at any cost. But at the same time, you're killing people. And these are your own people. Whether you are a Northern Irish or a Republic of Ireland, like, these are still Irish people, right? And maybe Marion herself isn't killing these people, but the IRA is, and both her and Dolores are complicit. And in some cases, the IRA is even killing its own people, like Catholics. So how do you square that away internally if you're Dolores and Marion? And that internal conflict is at the heart of this show. And you have an honorable goal, but is this the way of going about achieving it? Like that's that internal conflict. And something that I pondered a lot throughout watching this show. And if anybody watching this is a older Irish viewer, like my age or older, maybe you can help me kind of like square this away in my mind. But what is the experience like of watching a show, like this one, that for all intents and purposes, kind of humanizes the IRA as some of its most high-ranking and powerful members? Like, let's say you're a resident of Belfast today in 2024, and let's say back in 1972, let's say you were 10 years old, and your mom was killed in one of these IRA bombings where, yeah, sure, the intent might have been to kill British soldiers, but your mom was a fucking casualty, right? How are you going to feel watching this show humanize people from the group responsible for killing your mother? Like, and I'm not saying this is going to be the same thing, but it's kind of similar to, say, someone who lost a family member here during 9/11 watching a show with like a bunch of likable Al-Qaeda members and shit. Like, historical dramas don't often have to contend with the people who experienced the atrocities still being around to experience their content. And that's kind of the point of creating a show or film based on historical events, to kind of like help educate the people who are alive today on those events. But I was alive during this time. Like, obviously I wasn't in Ireland, though I am a very healthy 40% Irish. No bullshit. You can't see it in my beard. I have a lot of red hair in my beard. I had red hair in my hair when I wasn't shaving it. I'm 40% Irish, but that's beside the point. The point is, there's still people alive today who lived through this, and they're not old as fuck either. We're not talking about like, oh, this is the last person who survived the Holocaust. He's 108 years old. Like, no, there are people, like I said, the main guy, one of the main characters of the show, a guy named Jerry Adams, he's still alive today. He's 76. Like, so I'm very curious as to how this show is going to be perceived in Belfast and in Dublin. Like, I'd love to hear the opinion of a 60-year-old Irish man from Belfast or Irish woman from Belfast. What did you think about this show? I would love to hear that. Like, I'm over here in America singing high praises about the quality of this show. Meanwhile, there very well maybe someone my age in Belfast watching this show right now going, why the fuck are you humanizing Dolar's fucking Price? Like, fuck this show. Like, that could be actually happening, and that thought is fascinating to me. It's fascinating. But back to the show. Dollars and Marion are unequivocally the star characters here. The show follows them from a young age as nonviolent protesters who kind of look down on the violence that's taking place, but their entire family is IRA. Their parents, both IRA, but their aunt, the one I mentioned earlier, she took the worst of it. She lost both her eyes and both her hands in the conflict. And one of my favorite little things about this show is how the aunt continues to smoke cigarettes, right? Like, she can't see, she doesn't have any hands, how the fuck is she smoking, right? So someone has to like sit with her, put the cigarette to her mouth. She's sitting there puffing, hands free, no Bluetooth, hands free. And then when she's done, the other person has to come take it away. She exhales, talks for a little bit. Other person, here's your cigarette. Like, it's just really interesting to watch. But after a violent run-in during one of their non-violent marches, Dollars and Marion eventually join up with the IRA. Initially, Dollars doesn't do much from her perspective. She only sees herself as a driver, which she feels is a job that's beneath her talents. But she's driving people off the touts, as they call them, who are traders, informants, etc., to the southern border of Northern Ireland to be taken across the border and killed. So it is a bit reductive to see herself as nothing more than a driver, but nevertheless, she wants to do more for the cause. And she proposed a bombing in London, which is a massive escalation of this war, right? And it's after this bombing that her, Marion, and several others are arrested and imprisoned overseas in London, leading to one of the better episodes in this series, one that follows Dollars and Marion's experiences in a London prison over the course of 8 years. I'll spare you what happens. Again, trying to not really do spoilers here, but it's a great fucking episode, man. Very moving, difficult to watch at times. Really great episode. After their release and after the Good Friday Agreement, which essentially ends the war, that's the name of the, I don't want to say treaty, but I mean, it's agreement, but they call it the Good Friday Agreement. After it ends the war, Dollars and Marion kind of see the world differently. And I don't mean they collectively see the world differently. Like, Dollars sees things one way, Marion sees things another way. One thing they do agree on, though, is that they both see the Good Friday Agreement as a loss. Jerry Adams, the guy I mentioned already, he helped orchestrate this agreement to end the war, and they see him as a sellout who betrayed the cause for political gain. Like, he gets in front of cameras trying to be a politician, claims he's never been in the IRA, a fact that the show is very clear about. At the end of every episode, there's like a text that says, Jerry Adams has always denied being involved in the IRA. At the end, not just once. Or like normally they save that for like the credits of the last episode. Every episode they end with that. But Dollars and Marion say that not only was he in the IRA, but he gave the orders for all the crimes that they've committed. Now, not only is he claiming no involvement, but he's orchestrated a peace that feels like a loss because the IRA is giving up their weapons and Northern Ireland is remaining with the UK, as it still is to this day. And that's one of the other internal conflicts that made me love this series. If you're Dollars or Marion or Brendan Hughes, that's the character that Anthony Boyle plays, and you've done all these terrible things that weigh on your soul, you've served all this time in prison because you've so firmly believed in a united Ireland, and you've done all that just to end up in a place that feels like a loss, like that's got to weigh on you. And that's where Dollars and Marion kind of begin to diverge. Like, as they become old, Dollars sees the futility in not just continuing to fight, but in all the horrible shit she's already done. Like, she's been complicit in the deaths of people she cared about, as well as innocent people. And for what? To, like, still not have a united Ireland? Like, I can't imagine what that must feel like. But Marion, she can't let it go. It's like, she's old as fuck, still out here fighting, still out here planning bombings and shit, saying that the war doesn't end because Jerry Adams fucking gave up. And these feelings, this internal conflict, this leads to Dollars and Brendan participating in something called the Belfast Project, where they tell their entire story, unfiltered, of everything that happened and everything that the IRA has done. And that's kind of really like the setup for the show is, you know, they're telling their story as old people to this guy who's recording it, and then we are the audience are seeing it play out. And the idea is that these tapes won't be released till after they die, so they don't really have to worry about seeing any consequences from it. But the content of the tapes will bring down people like Jerry Adams. Jerry, who sat in the shadows doing fuck all, making others do his dirty work so they could carry that heavy shit on their conscience and on their soul while he claims no involvement at all for political gain. And it's the ultimate betrayal for them. And regardless of how you feel about the IRA, I'm sure we can understand how Dollars and Brendan must have felt at that time. You know, they've done horrible things, and from their perspective, you know, they did it for nothing. And the guy that they did it at the behest of doesn't even fucking claim their organization. Yeah, that's a terrible thing to have on your soul, and to have the guy who ordered you to do it say, I ain't had shit to do with that. There's also a great subplot that runs through the season, and it comes to a phenomenal conclusion in the finale. It's surrounding a mother of 10 named Jean McConville. They only give you like small bits and pieces of this subplot throughout the season as it moves along. But every time they did, it just made me thirstier to find out what actually happened with her. And the show does a great job of quenching that thirst in the finale, and a great job of setting it up in the premiere. Like the very first scene of episode 1 involves Jean McConville, and we don't learn fully what that was about until the finale. And that might be like, oh man, that sucks. Nope. They give you enough throughout the season to keep you hanging on and to keep you engaged. But look, there's so much more to say about this show. But if I talk spoilers about a 9-episode season, this video would be like 5 hours long. So what I want to implore you all to do, join the Discord. There's a link in the comments. I'm sorry, not in the comments, in the episode description. I have a chat that's set up there just for this show and any other show that I'm watching or covering. So if you want to get more in depth, join the conversation over there. I'm pretty active in there. We got people in there that are active as well, even if I'm not around. So on that note, I'm going to close with this. I often talk about how it's the little things that separate a good show from a great one. Well, this show, it does everything right. It's an insanely compelling and moving story about real historical events that we should all know about, that is perfectly paced, well written, and phenomenally acted. And that's all that a great show really needs to do. We don't need a bunch of plot twists or secret powers or time travel or big budget action sequences. Everything works. Everything comes together. It makes you think and it makes you feel. You know, I'd love to see Emmy nominations for all the actors here, well, all the major actors, and as well for the show as a whole as well. This show's gonna land in my top 3. It may end up being number 1, and I encourage all of you to watch it, not just for entertainment purposes, but to learn about a very troubling time in our history. One, not our history and world history, my history, in world history, and then also, no pun intended on saying troubling times. So join the Discord. Let's talk more about this great show, and we'll be revisiting it in my Best of 2024 video in January. And until then, peace.